What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Age of Quarantine right here on the St. Vitus Bar Instagram. Really excited and pumped to talk to my guest tonight. He's actually texting me right now. Hold on. He's actually texting me right now. You can hear his band in the background, Kill Your Idols, legends. From where I'm from, and many people from St. Vitus, the Long Island hardcore scene. These guys have a lineage that takes you back to a lot of bands, especially our guest Gary Bennett. He not only was in Kill Your Idols, he was in Clockwise, a legendary band as well that didn't really get their due, but really had a lot to do with that early emo sound that came out of the island back then. Later on, spawning bands like Taking Back Sunday and bands like Sound Majority and Brand New, kind of part of that wave. Kill Your Idols has gone on to inspire so many punk and hardcore bands, and Gary went on to Sheer Terror and Deathcycle and Black Anvil and so many more. He is such an underrated guitar player. He's filled in on guitar with Cro-Mags and I believe H2O, but we'll get the scoop from him. And more recently, Kill Your Idols got back together, and they were actually one of the last bands I watched before before the pandemic. So glad I got to see that. And in any case, we're going to get him on right now. Gary, I can see it. Don't worry. I just do this. I have an intro, and then we get you on screen. You're about to be on the screen. What's up, man? How are you?
On.
What's going on, man? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's perfect, dude. Don't worry. I forgot to mention, I usually start with a little bit of an intro before I get you on the screen. So you weren't doing anything wrong at all.
I was just busting chops.
Hey, man, it's good to see you. Thanks for doing this. This is really exciting for me because I don't want to make you feel more old, but I grew up watching you play. So that's like half of my life, I think.
You're a familiar face all these years.
That's right, man. That's right. So we're gonna treat this like a public therapy session, if that's cool with you. I'm gonna ask you a lot of questions and try to get through all of it in 1 hour.
I want to let you know I'm overdressed, but not really, because I'm sitting in my garage. Because my wife tells me I talk too loud when I'm on the phone. So we have.
Oh, good, man. You look good. You got to stay warm while you're sitting in your garage, dude. So before we get into it, just sort of like a formality, I always ask, like, how are you getting through this strange time?
Well, fortunately, so far so good. None of us have gotten sick in the household, and my wife is a social worker, so she has a school job, and I work for the power company, so I'm an essential worker, and there have been times where we've had quarantine and all that kind of stuff, but so far so good. We've gotten through it. I mean, at the very beginning of this, I may have had it because I was sick, and it was definitely weird and definitely not like a lot of the description. It was at the very beginning, and I'm here to talk about it, so I must not have gotten it that bad. No one else in the house got it while I had it, so it's, as you know, it's a really mysterious thing. Actually, my 6-month-old son goes to a daycare, and somebody there tested positive today.
Wow, it's scary, man.
So now we have to keep him home, and the daycare is closed until, we just have to walk around on eggshells,
Right. I think I might have had it at one point too, and coincidentally, one of the last things I did was see Kill Your Idols with Gorilla Biscuits. I'm not trying to be funny, but like I felt pretty shitty at that show. And everybody was like around each other. So I wouldn't be surprised if,
That show, that's the last show I played before everybody locked down. And I was after that also. So we may have given it to
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was definitely a good experience to have before being stuck at home. Just like I see a lot of different types of shows, but to be at a hardcore show specifically was really special because who knows when you can, be physically that on top of each other like that,
That show, like I always say, on the bright side, I mean, even though I'm really, really going crazy, not being able to jam that much and not be able to play shows or see shows that much, like, at all. But that show, if that was the last show I was ever going to play in my lifetime, that would be a good one to end on because we never got to play with Gorilla Biscuits, and Gorilla Biscuits was really great that night, and a monumental show. And also, it was the first show we played without Vinny on the drums, and our performance that night was strictly for Vinny.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that. I saw Vinny and spoke to him about interviewing him on a drum podcast about 2 weeks before he passed at Amityville Music Hall. I ran into him. So it was just sad to see all that go down, man. And my condolences to all of you. I think I texted you when that happened. It's horrible.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we've it's been a year. It was a year. Yesterday, the 20th. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was a year yesterday, and it's not easier for anybody that knew him and that was close to him, and it's just really horrible that we had to lose him. And we think about it every day. Every day it pops up somewhere. Some detail of our lives is attached to a memory of Vinny. So
yeah, man,
rough.
It was nice. It was nice to see everybody's tributes the other day, yesterday, online, and obviously, rest in peace, Vinny. He was an amazing drummer. I've been lucky that I've gotten to see him play in Warzone and in Gray Area and in Killy Ridal. So I feel blessed for that. Tone, our friend Tone, did an incredible job filling in that day for him. So props to him.
Yeah, well, Tone's in the band fully now. He's a full-time drummer. Not that we're a full-time band, but he was sort of the fill-in for that show because we decided to do the show, and we decided to keep going after that. And I mean, the band did break up like one time that was really like supposed to be final, and then I know we put like final show, change in your life. Sometimes things seem so final and you don't think you're going to revisit or circle back to a certain part of your life. And then like, you realize that even though you've moved on to other things, whatever it is, new bands or new phase of life, somehow you realize that some of these things, it's you should never say never, because Kill Your Idols is one of the most special things that I've done with my life, especially with music. And everybody that's in the band or used to be in the band even still feels the same way, And
yeah, man, we're absolutely
past and present members. We're family, and it's special. The tattoos, the following that we have, and the bands that we get to play with, the bands that have come up that have said that they were influenced by us, and we have something to do with what they are. And it's just there's I can't really formulate how I feel about that with words. It's
absolutely.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we do it? Why wouldn't we continue to do it? So
no, and you've lived through different incarnations of the band too. I feel like Kill Your Idols is the tie that binds the all of us that are from the Long Island hardcore scene. I mean, like, you could say that about a lot of bands for various reasons. For many of us, you could say Silent Majority, but I would agree with that. But I think the thing with Kill Your Idols is that stylistically, you guys, when you started, brought the sound back to the original sound of that first wave sort of hardcore sound. So, the fact it's a classic thing that never dies, and I think it attracts people from all walks of life, because you have I would see crusties at your shows, the DIY kids. I would see kids that were into the metal stuff, even kids that were into like even the emo kids, everybody kind of got together when Killer Ridals was playing, and everyone had the tattoos.
Well, we listened to tons of different types of things. I mean, even you listed off some of the bands that I was a part of, and Clockwise and Kill Your Idols and Deathcycle and Black Anvil are so much different from one another, really.
Yes.
And I listened to all that music, and so does everybody else in the band. So that was our, like, we just wanted to be be ourselves and do something that was fun for us, and we didn't expect anybody to like us, and we were surprised when people really did like us. And I don't know, maybe that's what kicked us, put fire under our behinds to take it as seriously as we did, because we really didn't get that serious at first. It was just fun.
For sure. I mean, when you
took it more serious, but it stayed fun, so.
Well, that was a time period also where, I mean, even styles of music that got popular, nobody was thinking that you could really make a career out of that stuff back then.
No,
so
I never thought I'd ever have a career in music. I always knew I'd be like a guy that works a regular job.
Right.
I mean, I went on tour a lot, and I made a lot of sacrifices to be able to go on tour and try to live as a career musician. But eventually, I'm lucky to say I get to have it both ways. I get to be in my bands that have a certain level of success, and we get to play shows for people and have fun with people and put out records, and I get my steady paycheck and my benefits.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I mean, I don't want to get off on too many tangents. I mean, you and I talked about this because you believe the time goes by quick, and I want to talk about everything. But being a full-time musician and relying on that for money right now, imagine that. That would be a shitty situation to be in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Everybody who's living off music, and a lot of the guys that we're friends with that we would be opening shows for, whatever I'm sure they're doing things to get by, but I know music, and this is a sad time we're living in right now. We can't, you can't even go out and see a band and have a beer and talk with your friends. It's,
right.
depressing.
That's why we do this, man. A couple people told me that this has kind of helped them because they feel like they're at a show hanging out or just hanging out at the bar. You know what I mean? So I love that.
Yeah. Any spark or tie to what we all know is welcome right now.
Absolutely. So let's Gary, like I said, man, I want to take it back a little bit because I know the answers to some of these questions, but people watching, this is going to end up on YouTube later on, and up for people to check out that are interested. But are you originally from Long Island, and what town are you from?
I grew up on Long Island. I grew up in West Babylon, and moved around a little bit, but I lived in West Babylon for most of my life. And now I live in Hicksville.
Got it. Okay, so you're born and bred in Long Island. That's what I thought. And so then, when did you start? When and how did you start playing guitar?
I started playing guitar probably when I was 11 or 12. Like I didn't really take it seriously until I was 14 or 15. But my grandfather gave me my first electric guitar, and I didn't think I was a good guitar player, or I definitely wasn't one. And then I got into like Misfits and, like some punk and hardcore like that, and listened to it closely and said to myself, wow, these guys are not winning any guitar competitions. It's awesome. And it's great. Like, there's no reason why I can't start a band, So
we'll take it back for a second because are you self-taught or like how did that happen?
Mostly self-taught. I've picked up a few techniques and a few things throughout the years from people that are better than me. Like, for instance, my friend Jay Banks that I grew up with, and he was in Sheer Terror before I was, and he was in Cause for Alarm during the Victory years, and he's a full-on shredder of a guitar player. Like, he could play like Yngwie type stuff.
Interesting, because you shred. Yeah, you do. Well, that was something I liked about Kelly Ridals was that you brought guitar solos back, which is, people. It's so funny, like when people are like, oh, like, guitar solos don't belong. I mean, Doctor No is a ripper. I mean, that's, they didn't have guitar solos in Negative Approach or Minor Threat or things like that. I don't even think in 7 Seconds, but still, Doctor No is a great example of that.
Well,
So,
and then there's like bands like Life Sentence where like throughout the measures of this really blistering fast hardcore, there's like these, guitar solos, and little like riffs and leads, and same thing with like Final Conflict was a band that had guitar solos, and that guy ripped. And,
yeah, and obviously Agnostic Front in the Cause for Alarm era.
yeah, well, even the Victim in Pain. I love Vinny Stigma's guitar solos. They're not, they're not ripping, shredding guitar solos, but they got just as much feel as any.
Yep.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
But I was mostly a rhythm guitar player, and then honestly, it was Jay Bennett that joined Cause for Alarm and put a spotlight on the fact that that they had guitar solos and they were ripping fast hardcore. So
right.
I wanted to do that too. So I just bit into it, and just continued practicing,
So then when you found out about Misfits, and you mentioned to my next question, how did you find out about aggressive music, and was it hardcore, punk, or metal first, or was it all at the same time?
Well, I grew up very heavily into rock and roll and hard rock, and even disco and stuff like that. Like growing up in the 70s and early 80s and stuff. I was very much into early hip hop too, and Run DMC had guitars. I mean, I listened to all the hip hop of that. Run DMC had guitars, and that was hard,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I got a little more into metal, like I really started getting into Ozzy and Priest and Iron Maiden, like deeper than I had been. And then of course Metallica came along, and Metallica brought Slayer into my life, and then Slayer brought SOD and DRI and like all that kind of stuff. And then I would just look at t-shirts, like what t-shirt was Dave Lombardo wearing? Oh, he's wearing a Purple Juice t-shirt. I got to figure out who that is. Or Dead Kennedys. I got to figure out who Dead Kennedys is. Like and like there was no internet, of course. So you went to record stores and you either bought records or you borrowed them from people you knew. That was my. I had friends that were a little older than me that were going to shows, and I started tagging along with them, and I started borrowing tapes and records from them. That's. But like I said, Misfits. I always say Misfits because Misfits is like, like that was the band that literally the light went off in my head. I was like, you guys, terrible. But this is so awesome though.
But you know what I love about the Misfits, and it makes so much sense that you would say that, because I feel like a lot of people your age, whenever I talk to people who are in their mid to late 40s, always mention Kiss, right? And Misfits, for people that were more into underground music, same appeal in the way, because if you're young, the theatrics of it are interesting. It's going to immediately make a kid be like, this is cool. But I think the songwriting, more than the technicality, I mean, they're really good songs, the songwriting.
Their songs are like I worked in a gas station when I was that age, and the owner of the gas station used to listen to like a 1950s oldies station, 50s and 60s, and the Misfits had more in common with that 1950s music than a lot of punk did. A lot of other punk did, like you could.
Yes.
Those guys grew up listening to, like Danzig grew up listening to, like that type of music. It wasn't
Elvis Presley.
He was a kid. It wasn't oldies. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, Ronnie Spector, all that stuff.
Right. So like, I mean, I appreciated all types of music, and especially the melody of oldies music, and Misfits had plenty of melody as well as the heavy guitar sound or the punk attitude. They had melody.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very confused when I heard the Misfits for the first time, because I bought Legacy of Brutality after hearing Metallica cover it, and I expected like Slayer or Metallica vibes, and it was more like I remember getting the Cramps as well.
Yeah.
Bad music for bad people. Yeah.
First time I heard the Cramps, there's certain bands. The first time I heard them, I was like, "What the?" Because I was listening to Slayer, and I wanted, something more like that. So like, the Cramps, like especially the Cramps. The first time I put on the Cramps, I was like, "What the heck is this?" Dead Kennedys too. The first time I heard Dead Kennedys, me and my friend heard Frankenchrist first. That was our first Dead Kennedys record, and that opens with Super Good Food, and we were like, "What the hell are we listening to? This is totally strange." But
It's so funny, man.
But
So yeah,
it became one of my favorite bands.
absolutely. Well, let me ask you this too, and I'm gonna, like I said when we were texting, I'm gonna go brief on a few bands because you were in so many
Okay.
that I really want to try to focus most of the time on the bands that are up to speed with your current situation, and especially with Kill Your Idols. But was Clockwise the first band that you were in that was sort of in the scene playing with other bands from hardcore shows, punk shows, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Was Clockwise the first band for you in that
All
regard?
right, I think I lost you for a second there. I'm sorry.
I was wondering, so is Clockwise the first band that you were in that you were sort of getting integrated into the local scene?
No, the first band I was in was Big Sniff.
Sorry.
Big Sniff was the band where I had played with some other people before that, but Big Sniff was like the first band where we started playing shows and putting out 7 inches, and we got a European deal for a full length, and Big Sniff coincidentally had the same singer that was in my most recent project, 64, which we're no longer doing it, but at least we got a 7-inch out of it. But and similar deal, melodic hardcore, like Dag Nasty influenced, like melodic
Right.
hardcore. And we Big Sniff really connected with the Angle scene, and like Artie Philly and everybody that was, and what would the collective of people that would eventually start doing shows at the PWAC,
Right.
And then Big Sniff was kind of short-lived, and I ended up playing, not guitar, but I ended up playing bass in Clockwise for a little while. And that was a really great experience because Clockwise was really, really great melodic yet heavy music. I mean, that was like a real emo band. Like, emo turned into something totally different. Like, I mean, not totally different, but there are things that are called emo that to me, I wouldn't define as emo.
Of course, yeah. And I think when you're talking about that, with Dag Nasty,
was an emo hardcore band, really. Yeah, and
right.
That was a great experience playing with George and Eddie and everybody else, and and that's where all my relationships, that ended up bringing Kill Your Idols, to life happens. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for that summary. I did know about Big Sniff, by the way. I think that was happening right when I started going to shows. And so Kill Your Idols is arguably, obviously we talked about it already, but like it's the most significant part of your life in terms of the bands you've been in. One glaring thing, which I already brought up earlier, was if you take a trip back to that time period, a lot of what was going on was either super fucking tough or it was super melodic. So we had like two extremes. You either were like, you either were in a band that might have sounded like Madball or Hatebreed, or you were in a band that might have sounded like Silent Majority or something of that nature, right? And you guys came out with more of like a negative approach thing. So can you talk about how the band got back together, and then just like stylistically, what was going on that made you guys be like, let's bring it back to this old school sound?
Oh, well, I met Andy through a friend, this guy Vinny Segura, Big Vinny we called him. He did Mint Tone Records. He put out the Big Sniff 7-inch, and when Big Sniff dissolved, he said, you have to do another band like because he goes, I know how you're into like old school type hardcore, and there needs to be more stuff like that. And I knew I had to find the right people, so he introduced me to Andy, and Then Clockwise kind of happened, and that kept me busy for a while. And then I started talking to Andy again, and Big Vinny, and a conference call with me and Andy and Ron Grimaldi, and we talked about all the bands we liked, and the kind of bands that Andy would want to, if he was a singer, who he'd want to sing for, like Negative Approach. And I brought up Voorhees because that was like a band I was really into at the time. And fortunately they became friends of ours that we did a split with. So like, it's like so weird. It's like, it was like almost like all of this was meant to be,
Right.
Like all the bands we talked about that we loved, like especially like Poison Idea, 7 Seconds. Like we managed to do shows with those guys. We did a tour with 7 Seconds. We did splits with both of those bands, and that's what we were into though. And I just said, let's just play like some really old school, like AF, like Victim in Pain, Negative Approach style.
Yeah.
And nobody will like us because nobody's into that kind of stuff right now. But whatever, we'll have fun. And people liked it. Some people didn't like it. Some people like stomped on our demo tapes, like in the crowd at shows, and I don't know why, but they just really didn't like it. And we persevered. And incidentally, Ron was our first drummer. Ron Grimaldi was the first drummer of Killer.
What? I had no idea.
Interestingly enough, I got to bring this up. I told you I had a scoop for you, and here it is. Anthony Corallo has joined our band as our full-time drummer. He has a record label called Chronic Death, and he is going to re-release our original 12-inch. Now,
oh shit!
The only reason we're able to do this is because Bill Wilson at Blackout, who actually technically owns the recording and is supposed to do something with it later down the line, gave us to do a limited run of it because I pleaded with him. I'm like, Bill, we got to get this out. Like, this hasn't been out in a long time. So
people are going to be pumped, man. Hell yeah.
Thank you, Bill Wilson, giving us permission. We could put our own music out. And just kidding. And what do you call it? No, seriously, thank you, Bill. And it's going to be the original 12-inch EP. There's going to be 4 songs that were on comps that were recorded at that same studio with the same lineup added to it.
Right.
We're going to call it the 12-inch LP because now it's an LP. Now it's a.
That's so wild too. And then, are you doing new artwork?
We're gonna keep it close, but we'll make it a little bit different. It's gonna be like silk screened, and it's gonna be cool. I
don't want you to give too much away, but you tell me what you're comfortable with. But are you going to be doing colored vinyl and T-shirts and all sorts of stuff?
We talked about T-shirts. I'm not sure where we're gonna go with vinyl yet.
Okay, that's great, man. I'm fucking pumped.
All of that music, we're also releasing 4 songs that are demos of Kill Your Idols with Ron on drums.
That is insane, because I know Ron, and I did not know that he knew how to play drums. That is crazy.
Well, Ron is our original drummer, and finally Ron's going to be on a Kill Your Idols release. Besides doing backup vocals or whatever.
I needed a reason to interview Ron on the show, so maybe when that comes out, I can talk to him about that. What's going on.
Tone just said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Tone just said it's going to be 3 colors.
There you go, 3 colors. Yeah, no, but we got to get Ron on because I want to talk to him about Deathcycle, that, and also I think he's in a new band called Faithless.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but before we go any further, I just want to get all this out because this.
Yes.
Okay. So, speaking of Ron and Deathcycle. State of Mind Records is going to release new Deathcycle.
Sick.
So we're working on that. State of Mind is also going to release a live Kill Your Idols record that is going to have Vinny on drums. It's from Tompkins Square Park.
Oh shit!
That record is going to be specifically just to raise proceeds for Vinny's family.
That's amazing.
So we're releasing that, and we're doing a split. We're doing a split with The Path that will also come out on State of Mind.
So this is for new Kill Your Idols music for the first time ever.
Yes, and we're also doing a split with Rule Them All.
Dude, I fucking love both those bands.
What's the name of the label, Tone? Rule Them All.
Let us know in the comments, Tone. First of all, Rule Them All are one of my favorite bands coming out of Long Island right now. They have one of the best drummers I've ever seen coming out of the scene. The guy is unbelievable, and they're doing what kind of you guys did, in my opinion, in the sense of bringing melodic hardcore. Flat Spot.
Flat Spot's putting it out.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. And The Path, featuring John from Contra, are another amazing band. So that's fucking great.
Yes.
There he is.
Yep.
There's John.
You know, we're basically, you know, in the beginning, Kill Your Idols put out splits like we started to gain a following, and we put out splits EPs with bands that were coming up just like us, you know, and like we helped each other out, and like, you know, we want to continue that tradition, you know, and I mean, because, you know, what goes around comes around, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, you
know, you do splits with other bands. It's always a great joint effort, and you know, and everybody wins. And as Jamie from Hatebreed says, I like this. He always says this: a high tide raises all ships.
Yeah, man, that's true, and I agree with you too. I feel like what you're doing, if you in a weird kind of full circle moment too, like you started out, like you said, you end up doing splits with 7 Seconds and Poison Idea, and in a weird way, I feel like we can talk about Kill Your Idols today in the sense of Poison Idea or any of those bands where you have current bands like Rule Them All and The Path sort of in your shoes.
That's
where you were.
That's extremely flattering, and thank you. But Poison Idea and 7 Seconds, you might as well say Slayer and Metallica. That's like...
yeah. Well, I think that I wanted to get there, so fuck it. Let's just let it all out now. I knew that there was new material. I had a feeling that's what you were going to talk about. We're going to stick on Kill Your Idols still because I want to talk about some other stuff here. So the band, how long was the band around for before you broke up?
Oh, like shit, like 20 years? Maybe was it 20
really?
Years? Or was it maybe it was no, we did our 10 year. It was like 12 or 13 years. Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, because like 20 years, yeah.
But once you're over 45, everything starts blending together, man.
I'm right behind you, man. I just turned 40. I'm getting there. Yeah. No, but because Kill Your Idols, I was at the last show in the parking lot. I got a phone call. I left the house. I lived in Huntington at the time. That was a crazy time. And then, consequently, I was at the Black and Blue Bowl, which was the Black and Blue Bowl we'll get into. But why did Kill Your Idols break up? Is that something you could talk about?
You know, we've been together for like 12 or 13 years. We put out a lot of records. We put out a lot of records while we were together. And companionship was the hardest one to make. I mean, I'm proud of it. I love it. I think it's our best record, or at least one of our best. But that was a hard one to do. And it shouldn't take a long time to write good hardcore music, you know? So we just thought maybe we were out of gas a little bit, and we didn't want to change too much because we knew that our following liked us the way, and we liked us the way we are too. And Andy also had Derek just said something that actually is kind of true. I don't know if it's so much angry, but Andy just wasn't really feeling it to write lyrics about things anymore, and just felt like he was a little disconnected, and he didn't feel as sincere. And we just figured we would call it quits before we started to suck really bad, you know.
Hey, you know, self-awareness is a big thing. How many bands do you know of that put out some bad records that maybe didn't, you know, you want to pretend they didn't exist, you know? There's a lot of those bands.
We all explored different avenues too. Like Andy moved on to sing for Too Many Voices for a little bit.
Right.
You know, Paul and I continued with Deathcycle, and Paul and I also ventured into Black Anvil, and we were already in those things at that time, and we wanted to spend more time on those projects, you know? Especially Black Anvil. Black Anvil had started to take a real precedence in our lives. Like we had gotten signed to Relapse, and you know, we were just kind of in it, so it gave a little more time to focus on it and make it as good as we wanted it, you know. So, but
Black Anvil, man,
everybody moved on to something else, and you know, like I said, life is a circle. You end up, you know, if everybody that you care about stays in your life, you know, at some point you end up back together and you know, doing things, and Black and Blue presented itself to us, and we decided it was a good idea to do it. It was time to do it, and we were, we were pleasantly surprised at the reaction.
That was the biggest reaction I ever saw for Killer Idols, and I've seen the band in tiny record stores, VFW halls. I don't know if you remember this, but the first time I ever played with you wasn't even planned. It was in Iowa, on one of my first tours with On the Minor Princes in like the middle of Iowa in like a gymnasium.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey, we're from Long Island.
But yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah. I won't spend too much time on that because we don't have time. But one thing that you probably wouldn't remember that I remember, and it never happened, was that we actually talked about doing a Bad Brains cover in the parking lot, and we were like, we'll mix and match bands, but I don't think that we had enough time with both bands' sets to actually do it. But we were going to do a Bad Brains song, which would have been rad.
That would have been cool.
Yeah. So okay, I told you this goes by quick. Somehow there's 20 minutes left, but. Can you summarize, before we get back into Killer Idols, I want to get back, can you kind of summarize your time in Sheer Terror? Because Sheer Terror is a huge part of your life. You were in the band back in the day, and then later on, and you played on some records.
Yeah, well, Sheer Terror, I've always, Sheer Terror, I was always a huge fan of to begin with. And Big Sniff, bass player with Sheer Terror. We had Mike Walter. He was the bassist of Big Sniff and Sheer Terror, and that me hooking up with those guys, it was basically a bassist from Sheer Terror that was also in Ludachrist, and we had the drummer that played on the first Ludachrist album, and the singer of In Your Face. That was Big Sniff. So for me, as a 17, 18-year-old kid, I was like, wow, I'm in a band with everybody I have records of that I look up to. So,
oh man, so sick.
So, but hanging out with Mike, Sheer Terror kind of got back together while I was hanging out with him because they had been broken up for a short time. And then I started going to all the practices, and it was the Thanks for Nothing lineup that was rehearsing to make that record. And so I was in the circle, and then long story short, they had broken up again for a while, and then Mike wanted to put it back together. And he asked me to play, and I had asked John LaFata to play drums.
Oh yeah, fucking John LaFata, man, hell yeah.
We did like 4 or 5 shows with that lineup, and then Paul went back to Kansas City, and it was on hiatus again. And then we got offered a tour with Hatebreed, and
this is a long time ago when Hatebreed wasn't big yet, right? Or is it?
I mean, Hatebreed was well known, but they were still opening for Sheer Terror at that time.
That's what I meant, yeah.
So, that was with Tony Scaglione on drums, another friend of mine, great drummer. And that was the lineup that I went to Europe with. That was the first time I ever went to Europe. And
there's videos of you playing with them in Europe. This is in the 90s.
Yeah, 1998, I believe, 97,
right.
98. And I don't know, I did like a Northeast tour and some other shows, and then I did Europe, and then that was it for a long time. And then I didn't play in Sheer Terror again until after he had put it back together more recently. And
you played on some records too, right?
I played on the Paul and the Family EP. I played on an EP where we do Sham 69 covers.
Yeah, I remember that one. It's hard to keep track because it's like you were in the band, Mike D was in the band, yeah. And
Well, Mike D and I have been replacing each other in bands since the 90s. So.
Well, now you're in a band together, so there you go.
Well, if we're not in a band together, we're like filling in for each other or replacing each other. So.
Right. It's amazing. Well, I got to say this real quick. I find you guys to be very inspirational in the sense of the community aspect of it, because it's the same collection of guys playing in each other's bands, but even the ones that are different styles. Black Anvil, which we should talk about right now, it's you and Paul and Rafe doing black metal. So I remember that was a weird pivot. And one thing I want to say to you also is that in this weird way, everything you do is like just a little bit ahead of its time, because you were doing Kill Your Idols. When you played Black and Blue Bowl, everyone freaked out. You had more fans at that point than you did before, and people are bringing back the old school thing, right? the 80s thing, and then now suddenly fucking black metal's a thing. But I remember when you started doing it, people were like, kind of like, what the hell are these guys doing? You know what I mean?
I think that's flattering of you to say that we were ahead of our time. I just think I wouldn't say ahead of our time. I would say we just we have such an appreciation for the stuff that when we grab onto it and do it, I think we do it okay, you know?
Yeah,
but
more than okay.
as far as
Yeah.
like the old school hardcore thing, I will say this: it did seem like when we started doing it that there were a lot of other bands doing it, but they didn't come out because we were doing it. They just were around, and then there was some, and then when we all started playing, it's just like how like you talk about vibrations, like you're on a certain vibration.
Yeah.
I just think all of those bands were on that vibration, and we all started doing it, and it was just serendipitous,
Yeah, totally. Well, Black, talk to me about Black Anvil though, because I know Paul and you and Rafe are all into Celtic Frost and Mayhem and that whole thing. When and talk about how that came together. What was the conversation that took place about like let's do this?
Paul and Rafe and I totally grooved on metal more so than anybody else in the band, and that's what we listened to on tour. That's what we talked about relentlessly, and those guys got me into stuff that I wasn't even into, and I vice versa. And we always talked about we should do a metal band, and we should do one at some point. And I mean, we just kind of figured we were kind of limited musicians to do it the way we'd want to do it. But
right,
honestly, the biggest kick in the ass for Black Anvil to happen was when Celtic Frost did a reunion, and they put out a theist record, and totally reinvented themselves. By the way,
Well, Tom G. Warrior is always doing that.
He's a genius, and he's the muse behind almost everything in my life, no matter what it is. Like
Gary, what's that band the other band that he's in? It starts with a T. Triptychon's amazing.
Genius band, and
yeah,
genius. And Celtic Frost was totally reinvented, and that inspired Paul and I. Specifically, Paul and I were like, we need to reinvent ourselves and do something that's not hardcore, because we already know we could do that. We need to bring something else out of ourselves that is a reinvention of ourselves. And that Paul and I got in a studio together and started working on stuff that would become Black Anvil. And when we had a couple of songs, that's when we called Rafe and we said, you got to come and you got to help us with this.
Right. Yeah.
And all of us rose to the occasion. We all had to get better at what we were doing to do Black Anvil. We had to, Rafe never played double bass before. Rafe had to learn double bass.
I was going to say, I mean, when Black Anvil happened, the first thing I thought to myself was, who knew that Rafe could play like that? Because I'm a drummer and I watched him play punk music for so long. And then I was like, who knew fucking Paul could sing like that? Well, I love that.
We'd struggled with who we would get to be a singer, and the reason why we chose not to get a singer is because we realized that the chemistry between the three of us was good enough, and we didn't want to bring an outside party into that. So it was supposed to be me singing, and
oh wow,
I can't sing and play guitar at the same time. Really, I could barely do backup vocals. So
right. I
was like, yeah, I'm not singing, and honestly, me singing is just like it's a Celtic Frost cover band then.
Okay.
My voice sounds. It sounds like Morbid Tales, Tom G. Warrior. So
yeah,
Paul took a crack at it, and Paul has like a little bit of like Miller from Creator, a little bit of Daniel from Marduk, and a little bit of Eric from Watain, and a little bit of Cronus from Venom. He's got that all wrapped up into one voice. And
actually, I want to drop something real quick that I hope to do. But me and Paul wrote and recorded a song last year that's almost finished, that we're actually putting out, and it's him singing and playing bass. And it's heavy as fuck. I love Paul. He's the best.
More impressive than the black metal vocals that he was doing while playing bass was the fact that he was just decided to start singing also, like really.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
again, like I said, Black Anvil was a project, like basically that was us trying to grow as musicians. And
It's cool to see it still going too. All of your bands are still going, and it seems like at whatever times it seems to make sense, you may end up together again at one point. Speaking of that, pretty awesome transition, I got to say. Deathcycle is another one of those bands because it has John LaFata, it has Ron Grimaldi, it's got you and Tone. Am I missing anybody? Who else is in the band?
Tone was in it for a little bit, but Tone's not in it anymore.
Oh, sorry, Tone's not in the band. John LaFata's in the band.
Tone was in and out for a short time. John's the drummer. Mike D is back as our second guitar player. Paul's a bassist and Ron's a singer. And
got it.
That also was, like I wanted to do something hardcore but heavier, but not so much metal. Like I still wanted it to be, like more in in the vein of like Doom or like Discharge kind of, but maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
And Ron and I, again, another band I started with Ron that he played drums for, but he also sang. And then that was our demo. And then we got drummers after that to play on other.
I got to talk to Ron about this whole drumming thing. I had no idea he did that, but
Ron's
the Discharge,
a good punk drummer,
That's awesome. I know. I hear what you're saying about Discharge and that heavier thing, but I always heard in his voice, and I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's coincidence. He reminds me of Mike from I Hate God a little bit.
Yeah, he's definitely got a lot, some of that. I know he loves I Hate God, so that doesn't surprise me for you to say that, and I can hear that. And also, just Ron and I share a lot of things in common as far as music goes. Like I would call Ron up at like 3 a.m, way back when, and good night, Donovan. My son said good night.
Good night.
So I would call him up and I would just play. I'd have my guitar out and I would just play like a destruction riff over the phone to him, and every time he would be like, we got to do a band, and we got to get around to that. So we finally did. And when we made that demo, Paul heard it, and Paul was like, "Yo, I want to be in Deathcycle. I want." And we had a bass player, but he was like,
right.
So when that opportunity presented itself, we called Paul right away because, he wanted.
It's cool because especially knowing Paul, like. Deathcycle seems to be like a perfect marriage of like everything that would make him want to do that stuff again, because I know he's so into the metal stuff these days and not really interested in going back and playing hardcore music, but there's enough of both sides in Deathcycle that it just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and Ron and I are great friends, and all of us in the band are great friends. And again, like, we've taken hiatuses. We've never really broken up. We've taken hiatuses. And we just always end up back at it somewhere.
Yeah, I love Deathcycle, man. So I'm gonna breeze through this. I apologize. I just want to get because we have 10 minutes left. I told you it's gonna go by quick. But so you already went through what Kill Your Idols has coming up in terms of upcoming releases and any other projects that we didn't touch on that you have stuff coming out with. What am I missing?
We really touched on most of it. I mean, I did put out that 7-inch with 64, which also has LaFata on the drums and Scott Martin on the bass and Hugo, who's also in Kill Your Idols now.
Oh shit, Hugo just reminded me. Me and Hugo used to live with Matt Vancura, the original Deathcycle bass player. Yeah, that's right. From MDC. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, you see, it's just like Thanksgiving dinner, man. We're all a big family here,
Didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah. What was I saying even?
So you're 64.
The 64 is done. The pandemic came, and Mark, as much as I love him, and we've been friends for years and years and years, and I love him. I love him as a vocalist, and I love him as a friend. I don't know. He just wasn't interested anymore. So
okay,
we have a 7-inch that I'll sell for $1 next time there's shows.
I mean, I thought it was. I did hear it actually, and I thought it was cool that you were doing some melodic stuff again. And it's so 64 had a record out. The Kill Your Idols is doing 2 splits coming up. It's the first material in forever. And then what's up with Deathcycle music?
Deathcycle, it's gonna be pretty much in the vein of like where we were with the first album. And we have Mike D wrote some songs. I wrote some songs. I've gotten together with John LaFada a couple of times. We have demos recorded, but just getting together and making it happen is hard because every time it's like, you know, like Mike's wife Allison had to quarantine, so Mike had to quarantine, so that was a practice canceled. Then the same thing happened to me. I can't even tell you how many times I had to quarantine this year.
I mean, I can only imagine.
And knock on wood, I ended, you know, no one ended up sick, but we had to quarantine.
Right. Yeah, we just gotta be careful.
John, again, also, like, we had a practice schedule. John was like, my neighbor or a neighbor or something he had contact with, like, so he, you know, that's this COVID thing is holding everything up, right? And, you know, we could work over the internet, you know, because I do have a project going with Paul again that I don't know if I...
Paul Delaney, right?
It's Paul and Rafe. Rafe is singing. James...
Oh, wow.
Our friend James that was always like hanging out with us in Black, he does some vocals on it. I play guitar. Paul programs the drums. It sounds like a real drummer. And Paul plays bass, obviously, and it's like, I don't know what to call it. It's like, it's got some death metal, some stoner, a little bit of black metal involved, and it's
a
little different. It's definitely different than Black Anvil, but it's its own thing, and we're just we're not sure like what we're doing with it yet. We're still kind of putting it together. We have like 8 or 9 songs though, so.
Dude, I love how the music just flows out of you, man. It's awesome. It's really cool.
What else to do right now? I haven't written a Kill Your Idol song in like since like 2005, and like, you know, this pandemic has just been like, you know, sit around and write songs. You know, it's actually
man.
At some point it's been quite productive. You know, in other ways it's very.
Let me. You want to do a little bit of a lightning round here of some just quick ones that I got for you?
Sure.
Top 3 Kill Your Idol songs.
What I've Become, Falling, and From Companionship to Competition.
All classics. I love, dude, the fucking intro on that album is unbelievable. I fucking love that. It just fucking gets me pumped.
Thank you.
Okay, and then favorite Kill Your Idol album and why?
I would Companionship to Competition. I always say because it kind of happened exactly how I wanted it to happen, even though it was hard to make. But I'm going to go back to the 12-inch EP, the original 12-inch EP. That's like, you know, that's the thing that made it happen for us, you know?
Yeah, man.
So
I feel you.
when I listen to it, that's what I think about. I think about the beginning and all the adventures that happened after that.
All right. Okay, this is another one. I know you filled in on guitar for a bunch of bands. I know you did for Cro-Mags, as well as, I believe, H2O. I don't know if I'm making that up.
That was all filled in with H2O.
Okay. Give me the list. What were all the bands that you fucking filled in for at one point?
I think I filled in on bass for Millhouse one time.
Okay.
That was a long time ago. I joined. I didn't fill in. I joined Serpico and I did a tour and a 7-inch. That was.
I love Serpico.
I replaced Mike doing that. But I'd have to say the coolest fill-in job for me was filling in for Cro-Mags which would be the Cro-Mags JM with John and Mackie and Craig and AJ Novello. That was right. That was insane. You know,
that was just one show in Long Island, right? Or was it a couple shows?
No, I filled in for them like 20 times probably.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just knew about the time. I knew you and Paul filled in together.
That was my favorite time of all because it was me and Paul together. And as you know, not to pat myself on the back, but we fucking killed it. That shit sounds like the original Cro-Mags. If you ask
Fuck yeah, man.
I got a recording of that. I don't care to brag about that. Well,
Is that on YouTube? You have a video of that?
it's on the internet somewhere. I'll send it to you if I.
Send it to me because I never saw that.
But
Yeah.
what do you call it? But I filled in for them when they were still called FVK, and I went up into Canada with them, and then I did I filled in out of state for them a few times. That's a lot of fun. Mackey's a great guy. John's a great guy. Craig Satari, great guy. Adrian Novello, great guy. Fans of all of them, obviously, and that's just one thing. Besides playing in Sheer Terror, which is probably my favorite hardcore band of all time.
Yes.
Cro-Mags. Probably, if it wasn't for Cro-Mags, I probably never would have heard of Sheer Terror.
I gotta imagine you must have been a Best Wishes fan too, though. No.
Yeah, I like. Listen, I don't take sides. John,
Yeah.
Mackey, Harley. Like, I have respect for all those guys.
Same.
Harris.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for those guys, we wouldn't have those records. It's
Absolutely.
none of my business what goes on with those guys. But the music is so much bigger than any of those guys anyway. You know what I mean?
You're right. I couldn't agree more. I'm a fan of all three of those guys, and Mackey and Petey Hines and Doug Holland. They're all legends.
Yeah.
Let's do two more quick questions. Top three New York hardcore records.
Top three New York.
Top three.
Okay. Top three New York. I'm gonna say Agnostic Front, Victim in Pain.
Of course.
Sheer Terror, Just Can't Hate Enough. And Cro-Mags, Age of Quarrel.
I knew you were going to say that. I mean, that's a serious, yeah.
Redundant, those are the three. I'm sorry. I like like 100, 200 other records, but
No, of course, and
I mean, if it wasn't for the We Gotta Know video, I probably wouldn't even have known what hardcore is. So.
It's hard to sort of classify certain bands too, because Crumbsuckers was really a Long Island band. You could throw them in there, but I was strictly going New York City hardcore. But dude, this has been awesome, man. I want to give you any final comments or shout outs or things you want to let anyone know about before we go.
I just want to say thank you to my wife Mary, because she's been very supportive through this pandemic, and I hope I've been just as supportive. And I want to thank all my friends that have been patient, and the people that we work with who've been patient, and anybody right now who is taking this thing seriously and being respectful to other people and wearing masks and just doing what is really just respectful, because we ain't gonna get this. I don't know, everybody's got their own theory about what's going on, and everybody wants to tell everybody what to do, and everybody wants to call each other sheep or whatever. But let's just get through this together and stop, throwing shade at each other,
I couldn't agree with you more, man.
Let's get together like fucking friends, and
yeah,
and brave this out, It's all it takes is a little bit of respect and common sense,
I think respect is the key word, man. It's we can disagree, but having respect is the one thing that if we all had some of that for each other, we could just fucking get through this. So I feel you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, man. Anybody watching out there, if you showed up late or missed any of it, this whole interview is going to be on the St. Vitus Instagram in about 5 minutes. I'm going to get it up there, and it'll end up on my YouTube channel. So keep out for new Kill Your Idols stuff, new Deathcycle shit, new bands, the 64 stuff. I think I got it all, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
And I just want to also apologize if I talk too much. I'm what the Italians like to call a gacchiarone. So.
There you go, man. Love it. Stay safe out there, man. And I can't wait to hear the new music, man.
Thank you for doing this with me.
All right, I'll see you soon in person, hopefully one of these days.
Yeah, hopefully sooner than later. Take care.
All right, take care, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Stay safe out there, and thanks for watching.